welcome to the Mipar tutorial on reviewing a 2D batch. So in the last tutorial we ran a 2D batch using the batch processor. Here I have the batch processor opened in the last state of the previous tutorial, and we see the recipe that was run. We had two steps marked as layers indicated by the star that generated measurements for each step of the recipe for every image that it was applied to, and we also saved these steps as binary black and white images for each image that the recipe was applied to. So in this tutorial I will show using the processed image editor to thoroughly review the effectiveness of this recipe on the multiple images that it was applied to. Now we can open the processed image editor fresh from the launch bar and go about manually adding the processed and original images and beginning our review. But as is often the case in Mipar apps, if you launch one from another, there are some added benefits and acceleration that take place. So let's go ahead and show that. If we launch after we're done with the batch, if we click Review Processed Images, this will launch the processed image editor pre-populated with the results of that batch process. So here we see the two layers that were created, tertiary and secondary, and we have now our black and white images here and our processed images, known as black and white images for simplicity, and our original grayscale images here. If we move to the other layer, here are the processed secondary images, and we can click through and see how each one did. I believe the first two images are actually the same, so there's no differences there. And we didn't do too bad of a job. Now we're looking at this in outline mode. We can look at it in any of the other typical modes. We can even look at the layers mode here, and you'll see now the two layers colored according to how we set them up in the image processor, if you recall the set layers tutorial. So even though both are being shown, the current layer that is selected is what any interaction would operate on. So any manual edits, any measurements that are made, they're happening on the selected layer, even though you're seeing both in the layers view. And here's where you would change the color of the selected layer. And if we went to tertiary, now you'd see its color shown here. So let's look at the overlay, and I'll actually set the opacity of the overlay to 0 so that we have just the raw image, the original image shown. And I'll go back to outline. I'm not sure why the image keeps shifting back and forth like that. Hopefully that's fixed by the time this is in your hands. So we can zoom in to a particular area. You can pan around. Now the recipe certainly was not perfect. I think there are ways that we could improve its accuracy and avoid mistakes like this by playing with the parameters some more. But it's okay for this demonstration purpose. We can flip back and forth between overlay and outline now to flip between, to toggle the outline on and off and get a better look at how we did finding these precipitates. Okay, so quickly, if we wanted to remove a mistake like this, we could do that in this environment. If you just click Select and either double click on the feature or click on multiple features and hit Enter. I'll double click on this one. You get a point. You can move that around if you want to reposition your any point within this feature is all you're shooting for. You're just clicking within this feature to select it, and then if you hit Erase now, that feature is erased. Now you have this unsaved edits menu or message that appeared. You saw your slider bar is disabled. You can still advance to another image if you wanted to. You'll have to confirm by either double clicking on an image here or entering the number here. But if you do that and confirm that you want to do that, you will end up discarding this change, because what you've done is you've read in these images from your hard drive and shown them, and you've made an edit that is temporary until you save it back to this file. So if we clicked save, we would basically burn that change into this image. So it's a good idea to make a few edits, and once you're happy with them, you can always undo the last edit. But once you're happy with the changes that you've made, click Save, and now this state of the image that's shown to you, and what you're saving is the black and white, I should be clear. You're always resaving the binary image, because that's the underlying segmentation, is the binary. These other views are just a different way of looking at it. So by hitting Save, you're resaving the binary image as the selected file name, and you'll get a message that says Edit Saved, and now everything is activated again, and you could move on to the next image. So we could even, if there are some features that we missed, let's say we go to the secondary layer and we click through here, maybe we'll go back up here and say that we wanted to include this one in our selection. So I'll click the freehand tool, I'll just click and hold and release when I'm done, and say fill that in. And now that's an added feature. And if we hit save, we've made that permanent. So this is a fairly convenient way of quickly surveying the effectiveness of your batch process and making manual edits if necessary. Now we can also, if there are severe mistakes, if one image needed, say, an entirely different recipe, or just needed modified parameters to the recipe that it ran with, we could have that image selected over here, let's say this image, and if we hit open in the grayscale panel, what this is going to do is open this image in the image processor. And now, if we loaded up the recipe that we applied, I'll do this one here. I'll let this load in, and I'll just go ahead and change one of the parameters just to show. I'm pretty happy with the results of this image, but just as an example, if we went and modified this original step, made the threshold worse. Let's hit accept and let that propagate through. So what we're looking at over here is this image is being displayed as an outline on this corresponding original. So this is the output of the secondary layer from this recipe. So now if I go to how the secondary layer currently stands with the modified recipe, if I resave the black and white image in the image processor, so I'm just going to save image as, go into my processed folder. Let me remind myself what file name that was. That was image number 45. So if I resave this as 45 secondary, say yes. Now if I go back to my processed image editor and I just hit refresh, you'll see that outline change and the image shifted. I apologize for that, but the outline has changed. It's shrunk now. So we've loaded in the image into the image processor. We've loaded in the recipe, made a change to the recipe. It resaved the image, and now that's instantly reflected over here in the processed image editor. So it can be a helpful way to apply a different recipe to one or two or three particular images if it helps improve your segmentation in a more efficient way than manually fixing it by hand. So that is a quick look at reviewing a batch. We've shown how to automatically bring in images. I'll just finish quickly, even though it is less efficient, with starting from scratch and showing you how to load in these layers if you didn't launch the processed image editor from the batch processor. So let's open up the batch processor. So let's open the processed image editor fresh, and we'll first add the secondary. I'm sorry, that's the measurements folder. So inside of processed, we'll pick all of the secondary processed images and hit open. And now we can rename this layer secondary. And now we can add a new layer, call that tertiary, and we'll pick those images. And now we can add the corresponding original images. And there we go. We're looking at the tertiary layer in outline mode. And we have the secondary images in outlined mode, both sorted the same way, so we're overlaying the right processed images on the correct original images. So not too long to load them in manually, but it is more helpful if you can to just load in the images directly from the batch processor. So that should do it for a quick run through of reviewing a batch in the processed image editor. If you are interested in generating measurements out of the processed image editor, please tune in to the next tutorial. Thanks very much for your attention, and I hope to see you next time.